all right. So this is the 100th episode of the Homeroom with Smooth podcast. How are y'all doing today?
Excited.
Excellent.
Let's get it going.
That's great. So quick story. I want to share with you guys a quick story from when I was at the DMV, real quick to get us started. So I was at the DMV, right? All right. So this is a while ago, but it just popped up in my head because I was going through some old content and I watched the video and I was like, yo, this story is hilarious. So I'm in the DMV. I'm sitting there minding my business, waiting on my number to be called. And this guy is talking about how he couldn't get no sleep. He's like, man, I couldn't get no sleep, man. I've been having nightmares. And I'm like, nightmares? He's like, yeah, man, I had 8 in a row. And I'm like, 8 nightmares in a row? And the other dude was like, man, what happened to you in the nightmares? He's like, I died in every single last one of them. I said, oh, bruh. You need to.
It's funny you say that because anytime I have a dream, I can actually remember, or like it. That's what's happening. I'm dying, or like somebody's dying in front of me. But so like
it's funny because I had a nightmare last night too, and I woke up because I had sleep paralysis, and my dog was having a nightmare too. Like, I'm not being dramatic. This happened last night.
Sleep paralysis is a bitch, man. I haven't had it in a while, but like that shit is horrifying.
Oh my god, I could never.
Yeah,
fuck that shit.
Y'all better than me. I done had like a handful of nightmares. The only one that's notable, that's recent, is before I went to Miami. I had a dream. I was down in South Beach, coming out of a steakhouse that I wanted to go to, and for some reason I got into it with the cartel and ended up getting shot. And after that point, I didn't go to the steakhouse. Like they wanted to go when we went to Miami. They wanted to go down to South Beach. I did everything I could to avoid it because I had a bad anxiety. I thought I was gonna die. Like it was too soon. It was like 3 days before I went. I was like, too soon. I'm not going.
Oh no, that's funny.
That is funny.
Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I want to introduce the new people that we have on today. So right now, today we have on Mariah. So Mariah, introduce yourself. You know.
I am Mariah. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and that's pretty much it. I have to say.
All right, cool. All right, so we got my man Larry. What's going on, my guy?
Larry.
What's up? Glad to be here finally. I'm located in Glendale, Arizona, but I'm originally from, ironically, Maryland. So when Smooth said DMV, and I was like, listen to the full details because I don't think he means DC, Maryland. So I'm glad to be here, man.
I live in Maryland. Hey.
Hey.
Ooh,
What part?
Up Marlboro.
Street from my elementary.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right. And then I also have our special guest of the evening, Dr. DL. How you doing today, sir?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm currently living in Norfolk, Virginia, where I'm a professor of African American history and African American studies.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
Nice. All right. So that's it. Oh well, you didn't want to take your cheat. I was gonna ask another question, but never mind. You probably omitted it for a reason. So anyway, so the question of today is the American family salvageable? Okay. So first of all, I have to ask the question: what is the ideal American family mean to you? Like, what is the American family for you? So we'll just go round robin. So Lee, start us off, and then we'll just go around just like we just did.
So from what I remember from like high school textbooks, like history textbooks, the nuclear family being a father, mother, or son and daughter, a family of four, or and like I think that's the biggest picture for most people, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
not sure. That's how I remember it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, when I hear American Family, I think uh, two parents, two kids, maybe a dog. The white picket fence with the two-story home and the four bedrooms, two baths with the perfect cut lawn, and you're cool with your neighbors. That's what I think of.
Cul-de-sac.
Yeah, and the cul-de-sac, and the two cars, and the two-car garage.
Oh,
Yeah, when I think of the American Family, like the picture that comes to my mind is like the Huxtables, the well-established
Mhm.
parents and the poised children. That's what I think of.
All right, Frankie.
Think about the family that works. Honestly, I don't have a preconceived notion of what people try to make us strive for or what it's supposed to be. Honestly, I just think of the family that works because I guess being all over different parts of the country, the American family is different for each person because each area is different.
Okay.
also
Okay.
true.
Larry, what's good, man?
Hey, hey. So my idea of like the American family is always like pretty much y'all kind of hit the nail on the head with the nuclear family because I'm always thinking like a two-parent household. It could be mother and father majority of the time, child maybe one or two, and a dog. And I definitely thought of a fence too, but it's kind of hard because I grew up in a single-parent household, so I definitely my ideals definitely changed with the quickness because I knew a lot of single-parent households that definitely had either one or two or more kids, but that somehow they still made it work. I had a friend, we're friends to this day. She had seven siblings, including herself.
Man,
Yeah, and it was just all mom holding it down, bro. And all of them are like,
Wow.
yeah. So it used to
Whew.
be the nuclear
oh,
household, but clearly the
heart
nuclear
goes out to
family.
her. Ugh.
Me
Hey,
too.
for
Hmm.
real,
Jeez.
That's different.
so
Lord.
sad.
She gave birth 7 times.
All of them.
That's more than once.
Anyways,
Oh my god.
Dr. DL, what about you?
When I think about the American family, especially by throwing American in front of it, it makes me think about white people. And so that the ideal of the American family is something for white people, by white people, to maintain this idea of, like the other guests talked about, this idea of a nuclear family. But when I think about it from my own perspective, it's going to be extended, it's going to be non traditional, it's going to have a lot of women or femininity in it as leaders and ability to do a whole bunch of other things. But when you throw American in front of it, of course, that means white, right? And so that traditional European understanding of what it means to be, in a family, and so that means cutting off the extended family. So that's what I think of.
Okay. Heather?
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna have to echo the sentiments of Dr. DL. I agree. I feel like when I hear American family, especially when it comes to the nuclear family, the first thing that comes to mind is gender roles and the traditional history of what families have been and like the American dream,
Hmm.
which is what you going after your career, you settling with somebody and getting married and having children and then just having this perfect cookie cutter household. That's what I think of when I think of and the American family. I cannot wait to demolish what this what the traditional viewpoint of the American family is because I don't agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. For me, when I think of the American family, like I think of obviously what Lee and Shar said, the typical like the nuclear family, like the man, the woman, the two kids, maybe a third. Like they say it's 2.5 kids. I don't know where you get a half a kid from, but all right. And then a dog.
One in the way. I don't know.
Complications.
Yeah.
The first one don't make it all the time.
Oh my god.
That's like a fucked up medical joke.
I was gonna say
I,
half in, half
I,
out.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah.
oh man. But yeah, I definitely that's definitely what I think of. I think of the typical family, but I do see it changing. Like, oh, like the landscape has truly changed. So that's why I asked the question, like, is it salvageable? Like, is that ideal family ever gonna make a comeback, or is it ever coming back?
It
Uh,
never was the primary thing. It's an ideal that someone put out there to try to market selling houses in the cul-de-sacs. I mean, because if you go to the farmland
correct.
of America, that was never
Mhm.
it. If you go to places like New York, that was never it. I mean, that's it. That's what it is. Because if you go to New York, you have to go to freaking to Long Island to get anywhere similar to that. In LA, you have to go out to the freaking Valencia. And I think, but if you go a lot of other places, that's never what it was. But I
Okay.
think it was just pretty much saying, hey, it's America, we have space, come buy a house over here, or it's so we can make money.
So
I
Agreed.
think
I
I think
personally
that
can't.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
You can
okay,
finish.
okay, okay,
No,
okay.
No,
the
I was
women
gonna
Go ahead,
talking
say.
at
Mariah.
once.
Go Mariah first.
I think that we did have the family dynamic. I think we did have the traditional household. I want to say it was like in the 50s and 60s before they started to enforce what I can't get my words out today. Can somebody finish my sentence? The housing. So like I we did have it at one point. It's just, it was dismantled
Yeah.
systematically.
Well, I think it was there in certain places because the thing is not everybody's in a city where you can get a house like that. And there's a lot of people who worked in agriculture and that wasn't the household.
Okay.
So okay, Shar, I'm gonna let you go real quick, and then I'm gonna chime in. Go ahead, Shar.
I was going to say I don't think that I can answer this question in general for everyone, but for me personally, as someone who does not, I grew up traditional, but I'm not a traditional person. So as for me and my tradition, yes, I am going to change that. Uh, oh my gosh,
Tradition.
definition,
Gender role.
Oh,
definition.
definition.
And I do
Yeah.
think that in society as a whole, I do see it changing just because we're all moving away from traditional stuff and defining things for ourselves.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Agreed.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I would say, like, what was my thought? Jesus Christ. Okay. So so I would say with that family, like, so you said the dismantling, right? So in the
Yes.
sense of like how we were together, whether we were in a home or like a actual home, or we were in an apartment, or whatever our living situation was, there was the man, the woman, and then they were
And the
they were they were
children.
together, but they were together more so out of, I feel like they were together more so out of duty than love. You know what I'm saying?
Obligation.
Mhm.
And it was more so an obligation. Like they were doing it to make sure that they got ahead because that was survival. That was the only way.
Mhm.
And as
Hmm.
society changed and you had things like the welfare system and different things like that came through with government intervention, our family structure changed from that because we no longer needed each other to survive. That's how I feel.
Right. We were led to believe that we didn't need each other to survive.
Well, I
Yes.
think World War
So
II changed that.
yeah,
I
a
Yeah.
lot
think
of things changed it.
I think like another part of it too is just like the idea coming from the 50s and whatnot, and like a lot of relationships that were in that kind of world and time. I am like divorce was not as like prominent as it is now. Because like back then you kind of just dealt with things, your spouse went out drinking, came back, another argument, and y'all went to sleep. Like, and back then, couples didn't even sleep in the same bed. They're
Right.
uh,
Right. So I'm not
like,
I'm not
Let's not forget to
trying to
add.
romanticize it. I'm not trying to romanticize it because that is true. Relationships back then,
yeah,
they were women specifically had to rely on their men because they couldn't work. They didn't have the financial means to live on their own. So I'm not romanticizing it. I'm just simply saying that I
no,
do
no, no,
think.
yeah, yeah. And by no means, like because like I like the way I grew up. My parents divorced. My dad. was a single parent. Like traditionally speaking, the woman actually gets the child most of the time too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and my dad ended up with us, so I had like a pretty different experience. Now I will say this because I've had this conversation before on like the topic of whether or not a a family household needs both parents, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
guidance of different perspectives. And like part of me agrees, but another part of it, I kind of look at it and I'm just like, I grew up with just my dad, Ed, and I do notice, you know, certain things that I'm definitely not okay with or that I grew up of it, and I'm just like personality wise, I've definitely developed that other people probably didn't. Like I'm not a very touchy person, and I think that's because like I didn't really have a feminine like kind of like spotlight in my life, for lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
word. I didn't have a mother figure to be like giving me hugs and kisses and whatnot. Like my dad was very standoffish. Ish. Now that's like a whole nother topic, but that's part of like the traditional family, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a mother and a father, you know, somebody who's strict and prideful and loving and caring.
Yeah, let me
Right.
piggyback off of quite a few things you said. So you were saying that back in the 50s, they kind of had to stay together and there was a lot of drinking going on. Let's not forget there was a lot of cheating going on too. There was a lot of that side chicks, but they didn't call it side chicks back then. So the
Oh,
woman
yes.
so the woman just had to stay, like you said, because they couldn't get jobs.
Smoothies.
They had to be silent about it because where else were they going to go? Fast
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
forwarding what you just
Bimbos.
said about not thinking that there necessarily needs to be two parents. I personally think that you do need a two parent household, especially well as an African American. There are too
Yeah.
many African American households that are raised in single parent households, and as Black men, the system was set up so that we could have single parent households. So
Mhm.
that's all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because dating now, because obviously I want to have the traditional household. Well, not necessarily traditional. I actually want to be in a polyamorous relationship, but that's for another discussion. But um, but with when in dating, because I'm single, because I feel like a lot of us are raised in single parents households primarily with women. I find that some men have a lot of feminine mannerisms.
Mm.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know exactly
Mm.
what you're talking about.
yeah. And,
Mm.
and at this point, it's like,
Okay.
what do I do with this? Like, because you don't want to make them feel like they're not accepted. At the same time, there's like a certain level of like bravado and confidence that you want from your man because you want them to lead you. But it's like, how can I follow you if we're gossiping? Like, how can I trust
Why
that
are
you're gonna
you in on
protect
the
me?
tea? Like, hold up. Why are you? Hang on. You're supposed to tell
Right,
me to
Oh
be
my
quiet.
god.
right.
Hang
So it's
on.
just like,
He came in with the t-shirt.
right, fill me up. Like, okay, yeah, it's a struggle.
Okay, so I would go ahead, Doctor. Yeah, I seen you unmuted yourself. Go ahead, man.
Well, a couple of things that are historically inaccurate of what you all are speaking to. And so, one, when we look at divorce rates back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, you got to remember, well, not to say you remember, but you must know that the United States made it very hard for women to divorce, right?
Mhm.
As a legal means, right? Divorce and having access to that. And so, when you all were speaking earlier about children. So from the 19th century through most of the 20th century, if a woman was divorced by a man, the man got the child, right? It's only the pendulum only swung since the 1970s towards
Mhm.
women getting the child, right? Not only that, especially because we're talking about white people, not African Americans, because African American women always went out the house to work, right? Because of the racism that they're under. And so African Americans did never experience this ideal of suburbia. In fact, redlining made sure African Americans were not in suburbia. And so
Mm.
that ideology surrounding the quote unquote nuclear family and these family ties and values were based and predicated upon the idea that blackness was automatically broken, to then put white people, no matter what their class situation was, into a position to try to mimic an idea that was problematic. Even during enslavement, you have poor white people trying to buy an enslaved African for status, right? And so all of a sudden, and so when you get into the 20th century, and television and automation and all these kind of things, it was unrealistic for most class of white people, but because of the ideas of whiteness and them buying into it. And so that, I think that was circulating this, not only this romanticized, but this televised. When you all were having this conversation about the parents sleeping in separate beds, well, that's the Flintstones, right? That are all these white TV shows you grew up with. That had nothing to do with the reality of how people were, actually sleeping in the house. And marriage is going to be, especially this traditional family idea, is going to be one of those ways to try to control women's sexuality, right? And so, if you was a married woman and you had sex outside of the missionary position, you were a freak, right? Right? Because once again, we're still talking about within white families, right? And so when you all were just speaking to gender, so bringing it up to today, gender is a social construct that does not exist in reality, right? And so because gender is this social construct that does not exist in reality, the idea that characteristics or traits are with inside of a gendered body as this innate thing is, highly problematic. And so the idea that I could be feminine based on some kind of trait, because let me go ahead and say I was raised by a single black mother who was a dictator. So I learned to be a dictator not because I'm a man, but because my mother taught me. And if you are in a grown-up relationship, do you want a dictator or do you want a partner? And so when we, especially as a black Southerner, to date I come from the Deep South, and blackness and Christian belief systems allows for a lot of sexism when we think about the head of household and in our interpretations of the Bible, because men are the ones who are interpreting the Bible. Of course, they're going to tell the stories that then promote them being in power, right? And maintaining sexism and patriarchy, right? And so when they tell these stories, this idea that I'm the head, if I'm the head, she's the goddamn tail. And what do we call the tail? An ass. And so who wants to sign up to being the ass? But women then will then say, I'm going to be the neck. No, the hell you ain't. Because you know what? I could turn my head without ever using my neck. I can use my whole goddamn shoulder to look to my left and to my right. So I don't need my goddamn neck, right? There's a whole bunch of people. So we take on these ideas of gender, right, that are highly problematic, because when we then say what it means to be masculine, and we don't want all that masculinity, because part of my training especially as a black man, and so Mariah is the first African-American woman I know who wants to be in a polyamorous relationship, whether we understand what that means in the first place, but she's the first one who actually said it. Where all of my married friends are in polyamorous relationship, their wives just don't know.
Yeah. So I have something to say.
Right?
I'm
Because
sorry. Are you still
that's what it means to
talking?
be a man, right? That's what it means to be a black man. And because one of my friends told me this when we were like in junior high, because we grew up together. So when we were like in junior high, we was at the barbershop, and this older gentleman asked him about his girlfriend. He didn't have one. And so he then, trying to prove to the people at the barbershop, he was like, I got two. And the older man said, no, son, you only got one girlfriend, and the other one need to understand her goddamn role. And so he took that as a lesson in how to go about being an adult black male. So he got a wife, and everybody else got to understand their goddamn role, right? And so I'll leave it right there, because gender is highly problematic, because if you want to take me as a leader, you also want to take me as a womanizer. You want to take me as belligerent. You want to take me as all these other socially constructed ideas about when it comes to be what it means to be a man. It can't be good. You can't take it in one without taking it in the other.
I think
So
Mariah had a question.
I feel like so we were talking about gender being problematic, but the understanding of masculinity and femininity is an energy that we all possess equally. It's like yin and yang. Like it exists within us, and it's a part. Sorry, the way it's projected and exhibited through us is based off of like the division in our brain, and yeah. So let me make sure I remember this because I'm tired, y'all. But you can, so like masculine energy, it comes from the left brain hemisphere. That's where you have a lot of methodical thinking, structure, building, right? And you can tell that based off of your right hand, right? This is what you write with. This is what you build with, right? But feminine energy comes from your right brain hemisphere. That's where you experience a lot of all your emotions. That's where you have your gathering. That's where you nurture. That's where women mainly exhibit or have. I can't speak. Sorry. That's where women operate from. That is why that section of our brain is larger than men, because that's where we mainly, exist. But again, we both exhibit it. It's within us evenly. So I'm a woman and I have to operate in my masculine energy because I'm in the military. So I have to give order. I have to give structure. That's a part of my everyday life at work. But when I come home and I'm with my guy, I want to be everything, but I want to be feminine. I to serve. I want to cook. I want to clean. I want to make sure you're good. Like I want to be submissive. And it's because of this. This is probably me probably having a dominant kink. I don't know, but this is what I want. And I would think that, the guy that I'm dealing with will want to be masculine, to feel strong, to feel like, he's taking care of whatever needs that I have. But I don't see myself being able to submit and wanting to open myself up to someone that isn't that doesn't come off as strong. That makes sense.
Yes,
I mean, like you're attracted to what you're attracted to, and like we got to remember that like no matter how many statistics or how much history we have like individuality is in everybody, and everything can be so different, like right down to the genetic code. Because whether you have both parents or not, there could be something that neither of them had. Like we can go scientific with it. Like it's just like we got to remember, like it's all a matter of perspective. What she enjoys, somebody might not, and like you just gotta look for that like other piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say that it's more of your kink than it is your gender, right? And so, right?
Exactly.
I did this because part of what you just explained innately makes certain characteristics masculine versus feminine, right? If you're a left-handed person, are you operating in the same ideology that you just talked about, right? So if I was born with a left hand, right, that I'm left-handed, right, that ideology that now all of a sudden this is supposed to be the methodical side, but I'm left-handed, and so
That has nothing to do with it because it's a motor skill set.
Based on her explanation.
No, but that was the explanation that Mariah gave.
If you're left-handed, that means you're working from a right brain hemisphere. Usually people that are left-handed usually are artists, right? They play these are just examples. They play the piano. A lot of artists that draw are left-handed, and that's again the side of the hemisphere of your brain, the right side, is where you experience creativity.
I'm gonna go clap back on that one. Hold on, Char.
Yeah.
There's a lot of artists that are actually right-handed, and there's actually more artists that are right-handed than left-handed. And I know this because I'm left-handed myself, so I look up a lot of stuff about being lefty to learn it like that too. And
it's not to say that everyone is going to be
like, I'm not
like I was saying earlier.
I'm saying that's a preconceived notion that has been disproven.
Okay. So yes, nothing's ever going to be down to the science completely. But I think
that's what I was saying earlier.
Is that your breakdown saying that if you are left-handed, you're operating from the right brain and you have feminine energy is what you were explaining earlier. So he's asking you to break that down further. Is that correct?
Are you asking me or him?
Okay. Hold on. So, hey, Dr. Dia, did you hear Shar?
No, I thought she was talking to Mariah. So what was the question?
I'm sorry. I'm saying, so you were asking her to explain more because she said that if you are left-handed, you're operating off of feminine energy. So that's what you were basing off of, what you said off of, correct?
Right, because so I do gender studies, right? And so I didn't talk about that in my biography. And so from a gender study standpoint, the idea that we're operating within these characteristics, and that once again we're turning these characteristics into these biological facts, and so by doing this, we're then saying innately leadership is a masculine energy, right? And that nurturing is a feminine energy, right? And so that is going right back to the patriarchal system that we're a part of, that then ascribes gender and say that that women are over emotional, right? That, because Hillary Clinton hadn't had a menstrual cycle and God knows when, but when she ran for presidency, that's one of the first things that was out their mouth, that like when she go on her cycle, she's gonna go crazy and blow up the world. Like, the hell's wrong with you? She's been in menopause for
that
God knows
that
when,
was
and it
wild.
worked,
That
right?
was crazy. Yeah, I remember
That was a little. I remember that.
That was irritating to hear.
But what I was saying was femininity and masculinity aren't gender specific. It's an energy. It's an energy. So it can exist within us all equally, like yin and yang. So it doesn't. You don't have to necessarily assign it a gender, but if I know that I operate in a masculine state and I don't want to be that way all the time, then I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to get with a man that has more
I
feminine
understand how you're
traits.
saying, like, it's supposed to be not gender, but by saying masculine and feminine, you're defining it to a gender. And I think so.
Yeah, but feminine and
because
masculine.
I am a gender, like I am a woman, and I
get,
date predominantly men or women.
I'm saying I agree. I see what you're saying, but I'm saying the way you're explaining it, because you're saying I don't want it to be something, but you're inherently putting it to something. So
but I do have to assign it a gender, because this is what I'm talking about.
No, but I think this goes back to, there was a point that Dr. Dale said earlier, that we assigned genders to things. I don't think feminine and masculine ever was gender specific.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you go based off the root of the word, it is though. And maybe that's something that needs to be redefined. But I'm saying, and I'm saying, I definitely see what Mariah is saying. I'm just saying, I see where the disconnect is.
Yeah. Because I was going to bring that up too.
What she's also explaining is there's nothing wrong with a well-balanced person has one of each. So I studied that.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I see what she's saying.
I'm not. This is not towards you. I'm just making this statement on the podcast.
It doesn't have to be negative.
Right. I study feminine and masculine energy also. And doing my own personal work, I discovered I have a lot of masculine energy too. If I have too much masculine energy and I want to attract a masculine mate, I have to work on that part of me to have more feminine energy. That's just what it is.
Right.
Facts. Okay. So with that being said, does anybody have anything else they want to add to that? Anybody?
I actually want to say something about that too.
Okay, go ahead.
I really like the fact that you guys put into perspective about masculine and feminine energy, because the older and older I get, I realize how vital those roles are, especially when it comes to developing. Like, if you're raising a child or something like that, you kind of need a little bit of both. Definitely when it comes to the male and female in the household, because I'm married for 10 years and I understand that. I grew up in the household I grew up in. My stepfather was super hyper masculine. Like, anything that was other than you showing feelings, you better suck it up, keep it pushing. You better not cry because you're a man type thing. That's the household I raised at. My mother was more gentle, get in touch with your feelings, and I didn't realize, like, it's that balance of masculine and feminine energy. Now, granted, when I messed up in school, I'm not gonna lie, mom turned up that masculine energy with the quickness. Like, hey, yo, what the you doing in here? I'm like, okay, I didn't know you do that. So it's it's a definite delicate balance when it comes to that. So excuse me, my headphones keep popping up in and out of my ears, but definitely is very important when it comes to that, because you got to learn, like, sometimes it's good to let your guard down and let some type of help in, or hey, maybe the message that's given to me is supposed to help me, not attack and hinder me. Versus, I definitely understand, Mariah, where you're coming from, when you want to let your guard down, and the minute you do, it almost seems like something can happen that could be considered as a failure. Like, damn it, I let down my defenses, or I let down like, why did I even let this guy even get this part of me? So now I got to build my walls back up, get more strong, get more assertive, and now I got to go to the point where I don't need no damn body. I do this shit myself, which can't really let the guard down no more. So it's kind of feminine energy is very, very cool. A definite, I want to say a tango to balance it for sure. So I like that.
Yeah,
I
because
was just having that conversation the other day. Woo. Sorry,
yeah, because I noticed like when I operate mainly in like my masculine energy, I experience like a lot of anxiety, aggression, and like I hate that I'm using like such negative words, but I noticed that I experience like that. But when I'm like operating my femininity, I'm in the house, I'm cooking, I'm just like flowing through life. Everything's flowing through me with ease. I feel less stress. I feel happy, and it's just natural for me to want to be more feminine. But it's not. So I was reading. I don't know if y'all read this book. It's called The Way of the Superior Man. And one of the things that it was saying that like a woman's emotion is supposed to flow, kind of like the sea, and a man is supposed to be like that stability. They're supposed to be like anchored and give direction. So if I'm dealing with a man. And so I find that when I deal with men that have a little bit more feminine energy than what I would say that I need, they're not stable in the emotional realm. I have found myself having to direct the relationship, and that's not the relationship that I want. That's not how I want to live my life.
Okay.
And see, for me,
you want what comes natural to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, too much masculinity is too much for me, and it makes me angry. So, like, if I'm dating a man who has too much masculinity, we're gonna argue all the time because then my masculinity is gonna come out and they're gonna bump heads. So, yeah, everybody knows what they can't handle. That's why it's good to know what femininity and masculinity is. But you got people like Kevin Stevens out here that's abusing the.
Yeah.
We not gonna go down that road.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like a whole another topic in itself.